Being a millionaire is not always about getting everything you want. Though life is easier, some find trouble finding true love. Someone who would love you even if you do not have the fame and fortune. This story is all about a millionaire's search for true love. Marcel Amfou is not your ordinary millionaire. In fact, one look at him and you would think he's a peasant. You see, Marcel lived like a hermit. If he goes out, he wore disheveled clothing, had unkempt hair, and had a toothless smile. He was not that good looking too. People who had no idea who he was would not pay that much attention to him. While other millionaires would boast and show off their wealth, Marcel was very humble. Fame and glory were never one of his dreams. He did not need that. He was a very simple man who had very simple needs. All he wanted was love. He lived in a humble wooden cabin in the French Alps. The cabin had no modern amenities. In fact, there was no electricity or piped water. Living this way had helped Marcel save a lot of money. His humble ways actually made him climb up the financial ladder. As Marcel's wealth continued to increase over the years, he never changed one bit and continued to live his humble life in his wooden cabin with his frugal spending habits and reclusive lifestyle. His looks never changed, and he still maintained his relationships with family and friends. In fact, despite his frugal ways, Marcel was very generous when it comes to his family and friends. In the private land around his cabin, he decided to build a few simple chalets and had his relatives and friends live in them for free. It is no wonder that he is well loved by those who knew him. Despite his incredible wealth, friends and family started to worry about him. He was getting old, and his love life had been stagnant ever since Marcel was young. Until one day, Sandrine de Villard, a businesswoman from Paris, showed up, wanting to buy a part of Marcel's property. As usual, Marcel refused to sell out. Sandrine was intrigued by Marcel and invited him to dinner. She intended to talk business, but it seemed that the night ended differently for the two. When Marcel introduced Sandrine to his family and friends, they were surprised. Although they were happy to see that Marcel was visibly happy with the presence of Sandrine, some could not help but raise some eyebrows. Sandrine seemed to live a lavish lifestyle. They were complete opposites, and they doubt that the relationship would last long. But unlike the other women who tried to date Marcel in the past, Sandrine stuck around longer than they expected. She was not turned off by Marcel's questionable hygiene or hermit ways. She did not even attempt to change him. But despite all this, the friends and family of Marcel were very familiar with stories of gold diggers who scam old and wealthy men and women just to get a hold of their fortune once they pass away. They wanted Marcel to marry someone who truly loved him. Seeing the age gap of more than 20 years and the huge difference in their lifestyles, they doubt that Sandrine was the one. Despite all the opposition, Marcel decided to stick by Sandrine and fight for their love. Sandrine was also trying her best to win the villagers over. She was making it clear that she does plan to spend the rest of her life with Marcel. One day, Marcel thought about how much his life has changed since Sandrine came along. He was suddenly sure about one thing. This was the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. And to the shock of everyone who knew the hermit millionaire, Marcel decided to propose to Sandrine. Of course, Sandrine said yes to his wedding proposal. Everything that has been happening was so off character for Marcel that alarms started ringing for his inner circle. What if Sandrine pushed to be married right away? They hardly knew this woman who suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and they wished Marcel did not have to make such a hasty decision. Marcel, who initially was mad at everyone for not making Sandrine feel welcomed, sent out wedding invitations to their wedding by mail. The wedding ceremony was to take place in the village chapel, and everyone had been invited. When the big day came, all the villagers made their way to the village chapel dressed in their best attire to support Marcel. Although everyone showed up, there was no doubt that not everyone was happy as the ceremony took place, and not everyone was polite enough to keep their feelings to themselves as well. Sandrine tried her best to live with the dreadful situation. When she and Marcel went out, she became showier to prove to everyone how much she loved and adored Marcel. She even posted cute pictures and selfies together proudly, and even if Marcel was always smiling and looking happy. One day, Sandrine and Marcel had a talk. She told him it was exhausting for her to live in the village where everyone clearly hated her. Marcel, naturally, refused to move and be far from his family and friends. As the conversation went on, they decided not to live together. When everyone heard of this arrangement, their hate for Sandrine definitely grew. If you truly loved each other, how could you spend life apart? The new arrangement raised some red flags, and soon enough, it was the talk of the town. When the rumors reached Sandrine, she made sure to tell people that she just needed to tend to some business commitments in Paris. Besides, she could fly back to the village whenever Marcel needed her, and Marcel can do the same. A year into their marriage, during one of Sandrine's visits to Marcel, she brought a bunch of her friends with her. They all went on a road trip to show Sandrine's friends around until they lost control of the vehicle. The accident caused Marcel to lose his life, and Sandrine was widowed. The untimely death of Marcel shocked everyone. The whole village and the locals in the area mourned for the humble millionaire that had touched their lives in his simple ways. The local priest in the village chapel was a good friend of Marcel, and he knew what a good man Marcel was. This sudden death rattled the priest as well, and he took it as an opportunity to drive some good sense into the locals. Sandrine did not take Marcel's death well. During the last rite, she was hysterical and had been crying her heart out the whole time. She even tried to jump into Marcel's grave when they lowered his casket. Marcel's family and friends started to accuse Sandrine of foul play, and the villagers backed them up. It seemed like the locals could not wait to finally expose Sandrine once and for all. Despite the suspicions, Sandrine made a declaration. She claimed that she was the sole heir to Marcel's fortune. She claimed to have seen the will with her own eyes. To make things worse, Sandrine said that she wanted to evict everyone living in Marcel's lands so that she could develop them. This obviously did not sit well with the locals. Marcel gave those lands and homes as gifts to his family and friends. How could she evict them? It was as if she was disrespecting Marcel's wishes. Sandrine's claim led to a more heated conflict between her and Marcel's family. As the investigation on Marcel's death was taking place, rumors that Sandrine planned the whole thing all along were spreading among the locals. Although there was no physical proof of foul play yet, most of them believed it since Marcel never uses his car. The fact that everyone else in the car survived the accident and that these people were Sandrine and her friends made it feel too much to be a coincidence. Because no evidence could point towards Sandrine, Marcel's family decided to seek legal help. The lawyers advised that if Marcel had any doubts at all about his wife, he would have left something to indicate so. After all, Marcel was a wise man. The family went into Marcel's wood cabin and searched through his belongings. Sandrine clearly had not been there at all since Marcel passed away. Then, one of them came across a handwritten note scribbled at the back of an envelope. The relative looked it over and was about to set it aside when he noticed that the paper was notarized. They were shocked to see that this note was Marcel's will. What shocked them more was the fact that Sandrine had been lying the whole time. Apparently, Marcel had some realizations and changed his will. The will indicated that all his money was going to his cousin. The renters who were living on his land will get the full legal rights to those properties. The family and friends could keep the cottages he built for them and the land the cottages were on, and the rest of his possessions were to be divided among his family. As it turns out, Sandrine was not even mentioned in the will. Despite their hatred towards her, Marcel overlooking Sandrine surprised everyone. They knew how generous Marcel was, and they were sure he would not leave Sandrine empty-handed, but this note says otherwise. There were a lot of questions. What did Marcel realize that made him change his will and leave out Sandrine? When the will was revealed, Sandrine did not take it well. She hired her own team of lawyers to verify they will and try to overturn it. She claimed that Marcel was so smitten with her, it would be impossible that she does not get a share as his legal wife. She said that the signature was forged. It was a long battle that Sandrine was willing to see to the end. However, in 2016, the court ruled in favor of Marcel's family. The will and Marcel's handwriting were declared to be legit. With this, all the villagers' suspicions were finally confirmed. They were glad that Marcel was able to realize Sandrine's true intentions before he passed away. Sandrine was left with nothing. This could have left a sharp sting for her knowing that all her efforts to fool Marcel were all for nothing.